Hello everyone, welcome to Book 2, Night 19 of the Orphan's Tales Live Quarantine Reading Series. This is a fun night because we've hit one of the sort of best bits of the Orphan's Tales that even I remember many details about. Even I, who wrote it, I can never remember anything about this book. I remember this bit. So, it's Sunday night. I hope everyone is doing as well as one can on a Sunday night. I've only had the whole camera lighting rig almost fall over on me once, so hopefully it will stay in place as it's supposed to. It's only slightly leaning. So tonight we're going to get to the River Pilot's Tale. I will say that it is actually based on a piece of Chinese mythology involving goldfish and dragons. That is not originally mine, but more or less everything else is. The particular biology of dragons we're about to get into is all mine. And it does have the honor of being the one and only thing of mine to yet make it all the way to film. I have the DVD here of this short puppet film. Trying to get the ring light to not reflect in it. Puppetry film, a group of puppeteers in LA made of this particular small part of the Orphan's Tales, and it does star Ahmed Best, who is better known to all of you as Jar Jar Binks, which is a weird, it's a weird crossover of Star Wars and Orphan's Tales. I guess now that I've written something for Star Wars, it is a slightly less strange crossover special, but yes, indeed, the pilot fish's tale here, it's not a pilot fish, is a real honest-to-God DVD. It made the rounds at Gen Con and the various conventions. Honest-to-God 40-minute film of something that I wrote, so it definitely has a special place in my heart. So, there's not really much more to it than that, except that I do have a video on my phone of Jar Jar Binks, Ahmed Best, saying he's excited to work with me, which is a treasured piece of filmic stuff, ephemera. So I hope everyone's doing okay. I'm excited. I'm actually kind of excited to read this bit. It's I have crippling self-confidence issues these days, so everything I write is garbage. But at least I'm pretty confident that this one is all right. So we'll get right into it. Let's do the intro that I can never remember right. Let's see if this is the time that I can do it without a hitch. As always, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a one-woman show, a play. You can find music based on these books at sjducker.com. You can buy copies of them at your local independent bookseller. If you would like to patronize mine, it is printbookstore.com in Portland, Maine. You can find me on Twitter at Cat Valente. You can find me on Patreon at Cat Valente as well. There's a giant essay about authority in fiction and fiction in authority up there right now. It is the longest and most involved essay or piece that I have posted to Patreon yet, but I do think it's one of the best ones, so go check that out. You can catch up in the archive at Cat Valente Live on YouTube. That is the name of the channel. And you can ask questions after the reading is over, though it works better if you think of them while I'm reading so that there's no dead air. Do you have a question, Very Heath Miller? What would you like to ask? See, now you're going to make me have dead air by waiting to type. No, I'm going to talk over you. If you would like to support readings like this and the rest of my work, you can leave something in the tip jar, which is on my Instagram profile, my YouTube profile, and my website, which is CatherynneValente.com. You don't have to. These are absolutely free. However, times are very tight for me and all other artists, and I have to do the grocery shopping run that I do once every 2 months this week. So anything that you can contribute would be deeply appreciated and will be immediately converted into calories for me and my family. And I will thank you by name on the next stream. Heath asked, what liquor do they make from orange peel? Well, they make a couple different ones, but we just got second place in our island trivia, and one of the reasons for our high score is that I knew that is blue curacao that they make from orange peel. We came in second, but the first place team had like 10 people on it, which I don't really think is fair. There were 2 of us and 10 of them. Of course they did better than us, but only by a couple points actually. Anyway, I'm definitely over losing by a couple points to 10 people. No trivia team should be 10 people. Anyway, 12 people. That's too many. It should, every normal trivia has a limit, but apparently not our local one. Anyhow, so let's moisten the throat and get into it. I know, right? 12 versus 2. They said, well, you don't argue as much. I'm like, have you met us? Also, that is not really that's not a handicap. Like when there's 12 of you and some of you are old as time, you're going to get a lot of questions right. All right. Okay. The River Pilot's Tale. I was spawned in a groaning loch on this very river. It was an accident. The water swirls up, the water swirls down, and every so often a handful of gold specks are caught in the sucking whirlpools and make dew in the pockets and eddies beneath the algae slick walls. We are the loch children. I and all of my brothers and sisters are called loch, and it is only confusing in mating season. The mountains here hunch and bow like old men's shoulders. And everywhere there are clouds and mists and trees bent low to the water, so low that they grow and grow beneath the tiny waves until the river floor is nothing but trees from either bank tangled up in each other, thrashing the mud between their leaves. The water is cold and fast, and in the crags where the ice seeps along the sand, seizing the bowing trees, leaving only the middle of the river to run and chase it as it is accustomed to do, there is a waterfall. I do not rightly know where the first goldfish heard that this waterfall was anything but an unfortunate drop in the water table. But gossip travels among us quickly. This is the nature of fish. And some red-finned fellow had heard it whispered by the trout who had it from the pike, who had been assured by the thorny-boned catfish, who had listened rapt to the drumfish's clacking tongue, who knew the eel would never lie, who was in awe of the adventures of the bass. And all of these agreed that if a goldfish could but leap over this waterfall, she would become a dragon. Many of the lochs disbelieved this. What a preposterous idea! Dragons are made from eggs and fire, and in far-off countries which no polite fish had ever heard of. And besides, who has ever seen a dragon in these days, let alone heard rumor of smoke or scorched maidens dipping their blackened hair into the river to cool it? But then we lochs were born separate from the other goldfish, and are a recalcitrant and ornery breed. I alone went with the goldfish who were born in the open water to the foot of the fall, to stare into the mist and the pounding, thumping water, to wonder how a goldfish could ever manage to leap so far. If anyone had ever done it, what would it feel like to have hard green scales instead of soft gold ones? What would it feel like to breathe fire? Would you choke on your own smoke? Would it burn your tongue? What does fire taste like? Most important, we gathered in orange and white and red clusters and wondered what it would be like to fly. We had heard that dragons had wings. The sunfish and the walleye had assured us that they had seen hundreds of dragons in their time. And each of them had lovely leathery wings, sometimes brown, but more often outlandish colors like our own skin. They were graceful. They looped and corkscrewed in the air. They tasted the wind like we tasted water, and everyone, just everyone, knew how beautiful a dragon was. Flying was like a long leap, the sunfish explained. So if you could leap over the waterfall, you could just keep soaring and rising. and bony wings would unfold from your back like fishing poles. This sounded far better to us than to be small and unremarkable fish, known only for a color we could not help. We wanted to fly and scorch things with our breath. What would the fishermen say when we were dragons and could roast them mightily? If we could put their little ones into glass bowls and feed them whenever we pleased, or not at all if that amused us. Laugh at how small a grown man will be if you raise him in a bowl and never let him out, not even on holidays. They would not say very much, we all agreed, and we wouldn't listen to them even if they did. But it is one thing to agree that something sounds fine, and another to accomplish it. We waved our tails at the foot of the falls and looked up at the mossy crags. They were so far. Some tried. Every day a goldfish or two screwed up her courage and her tail muscles and shot out of the water like a flaming dart, higher and farther than any goldfish had done before, and she always fell back to the frothing pool, nowhere near the crest, and just as much a goldfish as she had been a moment before. Naturally, I wondered if a loch might be superior. Every day we fought to stay in our homes as the water drained. We swam against the sucking flow, our muscles were tight and golden, and we were bigger than the others, with all our constant struggle. But a child loves its mother's breast, and so we loved the loch. I made my attempts at night, when the others were off feeding, so that I would not be ashamed to fall. But I leapt so far, farther than any of them. With every leap the crest was nearer to my fins. I could taste the wind and the fire in me, swollen and ready. And then, one night, when no one was looking, and even the eel and the drumfish were nosing in the mud, I leapt up, waving my tail in the wind, as much like leathery, bony wings as I could imagine, and cleared the falls. I fell with a great splash in the upper river, and had to right myself quickly to avoid going over again. I was awkward in the water, floundering as I'd never had to do, with a fish's instinct for swimming being such that we have never in all the lives of fish had a word for swimming. There is no need. I dragged myself up by a bent oak branch and lay gasping on the soil, air burning my chest, gill-less and finless and goldless, coughing and spitting and cold. I was a dragon. But what kind of dragon? I could not begin to say. I had no wings at all, and my flesh was not scaled and green, but pink and soft, and I had 2 legs and long wet hair that stuck to my arms, and all that came out of my mouth was bile and river, and no fire at all. But, I thought, no one has seen a dragon for so long. Perhaps this is what a dragon looks like. Everything that lives outside the water looks more or less the same anyhow, and sunfish and walleye are often mistaken. Perhaps a dragon does have dainty toes and blunt, sleek teeth. Who was I to argue? I had leapt the fall. I must now be a dragon, however strange a dragon that may be. I walked down the mountain shakily, my dragon's feet soft and pale and unused to rocky jags and pebbles. I came upon a village, as dragons are wont to do, and just like the stories, their eyes widened, and their jaws went slack, and they sputtered and ran from me. But they came back with trousers and a long loose shirt and a belt and a hat, and told me that I could not simply walk around naked. Dragons may do whatever they wish, I said haughtily, and nakedness is no worry for me. I'm sorry if it's a worry for you. But they pulled me into a little house and showed me a long oval mirror. In it was, I presumed, a dragon with long hair the color of goldfish scales and small round breasts and eyes blue as a river in summer and a mole at the base of her throat. I saw nothing the matter. This is what dragons look like, I shrugged, sounding more or less sure than I felt. I cleared my new throat. I'm surprised at your provincial ignorance. But if the color of my scales bothers you, I will take your silly clothes. They laughed nervously and eyed me from the corners of their room, as well they might. but I dressed, and with great hard-soled shoes walked at my leisure down and out of the mountain. Summer wound golden around me as I ventured into the world. I ate rabbits and rats, breathing on them until they just stopped running and stared at me while I puffed out my cheeks and became very red in the face. I sighed and snatched them with my hands. I was very disappointed in a dragon's lot. In my darkest moments, when the night was damp and the wolves crooned ballads to each other in the far-off hills, I allowed myself to consider that perhaps I was something slightly less than a dragon, but certainly more than a goldfish. One morning, when the sun was thin and bright on the blackberries, a hunting party came into the valley and caught no heart but snared a dragon. My face was stained with blackberry juice, and I did not know what to say. The leader of the party was handsome and dark, and though I snarled at him, he did not seem bothered. "I am a dragon," I sighed, almost pleading with them to believe me. "You ought to run and scatter like ants." The man looked at me quite seriously. "No," he said, "you are not. My father has a dragon head in his hall, and though it is quite dusty, and one nostril has a mouse living in it, I should never mistake it for a maiden." "But I leapt the falls," I hissed desperately. "No one else has ever done it. Me, a lockfish." "I'm sure I have no idea what you're talking about, but a young girl like you should not be out in the wilderness with nothing between you and the brambles but some uncle's trousers." "My uncles don't wear trousers." I protested, but his fellow hunters surrounded me in a moment like hares around a fox, and ushered me firmly onto a horse, and the horse galloped through the dilapidated gate of a city all of red towers. As we rode, he told me of the glory of Arjun, the greatest city which had yet graced the earth, great in all things, including the currency. "Did you know," he said, his gray eyes flashing like a minnow in an eddy, "we have the most extraordinary coins. Each coin, blue and bright as your own eyes, has 2 perfect holes in its center. It is such a marvelous country, you could be happy there." The tale of the Arjun coin. Long before even my great-great-grandfather's day, the coin was whole and solid yellow gold, and prized as all coins are. There was no duke in those days, and Arjun ground along like a clock, more or less on time, hoping someone will think to wind it, but unable to be truly concerned. Currency was what had been stolen from other cities, or brought by the river barges. Nothing was minted here. In this raucous place lived a man by the name of Amilcar, and this man was a fisherman on the Vareni. He caught pike and carp. "Why do you look so pale, my dear?" "With the most fabulous colors, bright yellow and deep green and eye-aching blue." Now this fisherman was wiser than the fishermen of the degenerate tales of the north, and he spent his evenings with a horn of brass and bone, whose rim he used to rub with oil and light to chase away the river insects. He played the most delicate, lovely music in his little hut, lighting the banks of the many-colored river with his flaming horn. Now Amilcar was quite lonely, and even a clever fisherman still reeks of fish. Beyond the local prostitutes, his prospects were few, and so each evening he would wet a sheet of music in gloss and place it against his rocking chair, and as time went by, the tea and sturgeon-stained sheets, with their notes like spiders' legs, thickened and grew into the shape of a lovely wife, all of music. And each evening Amilcar would sit opposite his prize and wish for it to open treble-clef eyes or eighth-note lips and live for him. He played the music of his wife with his flaming horn of brass and bone, but it did not wake. And if this were a perverse northern tale, it would eventually, and love him all its days. But we are more practical in the country of palm and cinnamon. Now the Vareni, being more or less made of dye, attracts very strange sorts of fish, and very strange sorts of other things which are not fish at all, and so it was that a lamia, called Vasya, watched Amilcar at his music and loved him. He was not unhandsome, and as a lamia is more or less sea serpent with 3 blue breasts and the head and arms of a woman, she was not over-concerned about the reek of fish. We have a picture of our lamia here. One early morning, before the sun had set about before the sun had set about setting his cloud lures, Amilcar caught a great carp, the greatest one he had yet snared. This carp was all spangled silver, having once swallowed a great quantity of expensive thread. The carp was most displeased at having been caught. Why do you laugh, my dear? And rolled over in Amilcar's net, a baleen hook stuck into its lip, and said in a frothy, gurgling voice, Amilcar, who soothes the clapping clams with his radiant horn, whose flames flash over the water, hearken to me. If you should let me live, I shall tell you of a great treasure which crouches by your window every night. Amilcar thought this was very fine indeed, and was wise enough to know the ways of such fish. He agreed immediately. Vasya watches you, Amilcar, and besides being a sure sight better than a rocking chair full of old paper, she is a lamia, and the gills of a lamia are full of gold. The fisherman let loose his carp, and when he returned home that night, he played his flaming horn as he was accustomed, peering at the breasts of his paper wife for his song. But just when he was playing so beautifully that even the tone-deaf eel was leaning out of the water to hear, he leapt from his chair with his horn in one hand, and with the other threw open the window where Vasya was curled, and her many-fringed tail, as blue as dye, and her piscine eyes blinking in surprise. I have never seen a lamia before, said the fisherman. Why do you come to my window? I heard you on the open ocean, where the ships break the spume like whales' heads. The tale of the blue serpent. Do not go to the river's mouth, the mother lamias say. It will gobble you up, and then where will you be? On maps they always mark us, the hoops of our blue tails humping out of the sea, demarcating the places where you must not go. But who will tell us? The lamia were born in the beginning of the dark of the world, when there was nothing but a great black sea. Some will say there was always green land, just as there was always black sea, but these are the lies of the landlocked. And we who breathe it know the sea is greater than the land ever and always, and cannot have ever been anything but the primeval blood of this world. The lamia are old, older than salt. Our three breaths are called morning, evening, and midnight, and we encompass the heavens in our coils. In the land of the lamia all things are blue. The waves lend their own color, and I cannot recall a time when blue was not the sum of my sight. Fields of blue coral where turquoise fins flashed, wavering fronds of cobalt seaweed and blue-black undersea mountains tipped in the last sapphire light, where the moon pierced the deepest into the water. The lamia were the bluest of all blue things, our fins snapping bright, our skin like an ink spill, our lures glowing ghostly, blue light in the blue dark. And the tides were shocking and new, and the lamia sucked the blood from the fat blue fish of the sea depths. My grandmother many times floated on the water, bathing in the moonlight, letting it turn her skin to silver and azure. From this vantage she saw a terrible thing, when her cerulean heart froze in her breast. It was a ship, and it was bleached brown and white, riding high on the waves, and it was in no part blue. Fascinated, my grandmother followed it, her thick tail looping through the water. She spied on its decks creatures of no tail and no lure, whose skin was dry and salt-cracked. She followed until the ship wrecked itself, for if one watches a vessel long enough, one is sure to witness catastrophe sooner or later. And from the waves she pulled a single sailor, whose eyes were properly blue. Being a fish, she did not moon over his handsome features for too long before fixing her mouth to his throat and taking her supper. We are practical creatures, we who live on the sea, and know the serendipitous food is to be savored, for it may not come again. In his thin blood she tasted the green land and the sheer rocks which were new in the world, and she shuddered. She returned to the blue depths, and there in the usual time discovered that she was with child. She was disgusted and afraid. There are no male lamia, and the old mothers, long-lived as they were, had given little thought to children. But when she was delivered of a happily wriggling sea serpent, the blue elders decided it was the new blood, the rocky, grass-riddled blood which had quickened her. Thus it was that ever since, when a lamia felt the pull of daughters, she sought out a sailor and devoured him. In this way was I born from the slashed chest of a rum wrangler. Do not go to the river's mouth, our mothers say. It will gobble you up. Where will you be then? Do not go there. There are monsters there, their harpoons curving out of the deep black places. But I was young and foolish as a tadpole. I rejoiced in the soft blue-black water, the cold of the ocean floor, the light of my lures glittering in my hair, drawing my luncheons to me. We are deep water fish, the lamia. We drink blood and eat sand, and our skin does not see the sun. I was strong. My tail whipped through the water. When I was grown, I went before the oldest lamia, who is crusted with barnacles so thick it is as though she has no flesh at all, but hoary rock, and I sang to her as the young ones always will. A recital to please our common grandmother, my voice filling the waves with quivering delight, with my desire for the river and the rock, my curious tale drifting toward their foreign currents. The old lamia yawned. Pieces of coral fractured off her jaw and floated up to the surface. Fine, fine, she croaked. But could you not sing something blue? Why should I not go to the river's mouth? I thought to myself, furious as I snapped away from her grotto. Why should I not see the grass and the clearer water, with pink fish and goldfish, and the sun like a great burning clam? I went to ask my mother, who was sleek and so dark in her blue scales that she was nearly black, curling around a rock at the bottom of the world, gnawing on its stony roots. I wish to see the river, I said. Do not hurt your poor old mother so. I am quite fierce enough to brave the river, I cried. Children must have been invented to vex and defy by turns. Ask the swordfish then, he will tell you where to go. And I went to the swordfish, silver and blue, his horn glinting in the shallower sea. Swim until the water turns warm and tastes of cod, and then seek out the carp, he said. And I swam and I swam, and finally the water became warm and tasted light and flowery like the white flesh of the cod. It was then that I heard the first thin, fiery tendrils of a song playing somewhere far off, like a beckoning. I sought out the carp and found him chewing krill by an overturned galleon which had 3 sharks living in it. You must go until the water changes color, he said. It will become so many other things than blue. It will be warm as an otter's skin. That is the river, but I would not recommend it. There are monsters in the river. With a trumpet of glee, I sought out the green water, and I found it flowing into the sea like silt. I leapt into the green, rolled in it, my starry lures waving in their eddies. The song was so loud then, I sang with it, exultant. I slithered onto the shore and let a long lock of my blue hair wave on the grass to say I was there. Alone of Lamia, I was braver than any forbidding map. The water warmed my flesh, and I found I was not so dark when the ocean did not chill me. I was turquoise and silver and cobalt all at once, and this was delightful to me. But then there was the singing, and I remembered what my mother had said about sirens, but I could not help it. I swam upriver, through violet and gold currents, green and red and orange currents, and I played guessing games with the eels and rhyming games with the osprey, and I tried to pretend that no one sang. But each day I inched up the river, and each day there was singing rippling the water like a wind, until I came to this hut and saw that no bird or siren sang, but a horn, and the horn flamed white and red, its reflection gleaming golden on the water. Do not go to the river's mouth. It will gobble you up, and then where will you be? The tale of the Arjun coin continued. Where will I be? Vasya said shyly. The fisherman helped her up into his house, where her startlingly blue tail rapped his walls 3 times and then began to climb up through the chimney flue. And so Amilcar was happy for a time. He would not set fire to the sheet music wife, as Vasya asked, but in the spirit of marital compromise, he kept her politely in a closet. But Vasya was a wild thing, and though it was true that her gills were made of gold, it was a foreign gold with an eerie blue tint to the metal, and they could not very well sell her gills at the market. She thrashed her tail at the good china, and though her kisses were sweet as sturgeon eggs, they were hard and violent, and Amilcar quailed in her embrace. But he loved her yet, and she sang with his horn so passionately that the eels fell dead in a swoon, and the river moved toward their hut to hear. She sang of sailor blood and blue milk and great blue eggs. She sang of the moon beaming with such strength on her breast that she felt ice form on her cobalt nipples. And he looked on her with wonder, and she smiled. Now, as husbands sometimes will, Amilcar was seized with an unfortunate folly, as some men are seized with leprosy. You may think of this as an overstatement, but not so when one's wife is a lamia. Amilcar traded often with the river barges, his fish for their pots and pans and tinkered scissors, for their spice and their tails. It so happened that Amilcar desired the wife of one of the bargers, whose hair gleamed like a great store of all the spices in Ajanob. She looked on him fondly, but was pregnant with her 5th child and had no time for amorous fishermen. Amilcar loved her as he had once loved his music wife, but she did not want him. One evening Amilcar returned to his hut with the day's catch, a bundle of carp which did not speak or promise wives. And Vasya sat very quietly in the chair which had once held the mute and voiceless wife of music. Her hair was deep blue, and tiny lights shone in it like stars, though Amilcar knew them by now for her dark water lures, meant to catch wary fish in their enchanting lights. Her tail coiled around the entire room, huge and thick and ridged with silver blue fins. "How many wives do you wish to have, Amilcar?" she hissed. 3, he confessed, his hands shaking. "I wish to have you in my house, and the barger's wife in my bed, and my glossy wife of paper by my horn when I play." In a rage, Vasya rose out of the roof of the house and flew in a blue streak to the river bargers. The lures in her hair shone bright as lamps. She found in the great spice barge the woman Amilcar loved, sleeping on her broad back, her belly barely showing. Vasya had never asked for a child, and when she saw the little swell of the spicer's belly, she thought in her heart that Amilcar had put it there, opening his throat to the brazen woman and letting her suckle at his grass-scented blood. Her tail burned white with shame and rage. The woman did not wake, for Lamia's lures lull even whales to slumber, and Vasya in her fury pressed her hands to the woman's gravid belly, leaving 2 livid blue handprints that had faded by morning. The child was crushed to death beneath the sea serpent's palms. Now, in some tales it is said that the child did not die, but was born deformed, a Lamia's half-breed, with 3 breasts and a very difficult life ahead of her. But surely this is fanciful. When Vasya returned to her husband, she scrabbled at Amilcar's neck for the marks of his adultery. It was not long before she could not tell the difference between the wounds of her hands and any mark the barger's wife might have left. Her sobs hitched like sailors' knots, and she threw open the closet where the bedraggled, neglected paper wife lay. She tore it to pieces with her hands before her husband's eyes and swallowed each bit of music, each bit of wife in grief and bitterness. Amilcar was shocked. But what can a man do when he has married a serpent? And this tale might have ended there, with perhaps a more loyal Amilcar and a more kind-hearted Vasya, had the Lamia not just then coughed with the last mouthful of music. And out of her turquoise mouth came a golden coin, tinged the color of a drowned sailor's throat. Still reeling, Amilcar stared dumbly at the coin. "Do it again," he cried. Vasya coughed again, and out came another gold coin. This time she did not wish to give it to him, and bit into it as he tried to pry it from her mouth, leaving 2 perfectly round holes in the center. And we will pick up with the conclusion of the River Pilot's tale next week. So yes, we've got a little call back to Sigrid and her parentage. Surely fanciful tales there. I kind of hoped that we would get all the way through the River Pilot's Tale tonight, but there's a lot that chops it up. So 2 nights, that's fine. I'll just have to wait. Much as the Orphan's Tale is all about waiting. That was sort of the idea with doing this one for a quarantine, that it has that nightly quality and that waiting for the next installment thing. Where does the legend of the Lamia come from? So Lamia are Greek, and they're it's kind of vague. They're vampiric and serpentine, but I wanted to make them more aquatic. Sea serpents are sort of a whole thing. So I don't think in any mythology but mine are Lamia deep sea creatures, but I liked the idea of, plus, a lot of deep sea creatures are blood feeders, and Lamia do canonically feed on people's blood, particularly children. They're not nice creatures in mythology, as many female-only species are not, but I wanted to make something a little more, a little cooler out of them. And, Vash is not anybody's kind and lovely wife either, but Amilcar is a bit of a shit, so, Sigrid came out of it, so it's alright. Yeah, they show up in RPGs all the time, because Lamia are, vampiric hot women, so of course they show up in RPGs all the time. But they do originally come from Greek mythology. Yeah. I love the bioluminescent fish and the deep water fish, and they're not actually called lanternfish. Lanternfish are something entirely different. They're called anglerfish, that have the little... I know exactly what they're called. They're called an esca. The little proboscis with the bioluminescent light at the end, that's called an esca. Those of you who've read Space Opera will recognize that word. Random question, your mention of groceries brought to mind. Is Sebastian still all about strawberries? What else does he eat these days? So my son is still a very picky eater. He does like blueberries still. He is super obsessed with raspberries at the moment, and ate, I think, 6 whole strawberries with dinner tonight. So he's still Mr. Berries. Loves that. I have now convinced him to eat grilled cheese sandwiches, which is very exciting for me because I can hide a lot of things in grilled cheese sandwiches and have. So I'm starting to sneak vegetables and ham and meat inside the Trojan horse of a grilled cheese sandwich. And tonight he ate a ham and cheese crepe. So that was exciting. Along with all those strawberries. So we're sort of using grilled cheese sandwiches, which he will only eat on super whole wheat bread because he hates white bread, using that as a kind of way to sneak all the other important things in there. Have I played the Outer Wilds? I have not. And anglerfish are terrifying, but they're super pretty too. Not the teeth. The teeth are scary. But the esca is cool. I have not played the Outer Wilds. So yeah, picky child. Dinner is always very stressful. But he's slowly branching out. He ate barbacoa yesterday. That was exciting. There's 4 different kinds of chili peppers in barbacoa when I make it. So I was surprised that he was shoving it into his mouth. Alice will only eat open-faced cheese toast. You can't hide anything. Yeah, so far I've been able to hide a little bit of the garlic parmesan broccoli that's recipes on my Patreon as crackly. I've been able to hide that, and some red peppers, ham. I can get things at barbacoa. I can get things in there, and as long as it sort of comes in the shape of a grilled cheese, then he will accept it. So slowly advancing our way. He was so willing to eat anything for a while, and then it all kind of shut down. He does love Vegemite though, little Australian as he is. Wheat bread is fairly healthy. He also he loves waffles, but they have to be whole grain waffles. He does not like regular waffles in any way. Everything has to be whole grain. He doesn't like anything that's just white flour or whatever. It all has to be whole grain, whole wheat. Cracked wheat is better. The closest you can get to just bringing him a sheaf of wheat. That is what he likes. So we are lucky there. I can go on and on about my child forever, so you should not ask me questions about my child. It is not interesting to anybody but me. But yes, Colin's fine. Trust me. No, I refuse. I'm not going to be that parent. I'm not talking about kids' poops. That's gross. I understand that still. I will not be that mother. So yeah, he is slowly normalizing his eating patterns. We'll see how much that holds. Yeah, look, any parent, like, everything about a kid is a science experiment crossed with a fairy tale, and you're always just hoping that, like, it comes out without an explosion. Yeah, the jacket. So he had this, in the picture online, he had this rainbow sequin jacket. I don't know where I got it. I'm sorry, so many people have asked me today where I got that jacket. I didn't. His aunties got that for him. I don't know where they got it. But it is truly a spectacular jacket. He loves it and thinks it's awesome. And I recommend rainbow sequins for everyone. Hi, Byron. All right, the cat says it's time for him to be involved. This is Lord Byron. He is my Maine Coon. He's a very handsome man. He's telling you all that you're getting in the way of his snuggles, and he does not appreciate it in any way. And he's handsomer than everyone. So here, this is the cat who has been glaring at me in this room the whole time. Are you happy now? Jeez. No, he's going to come right back. Is there any other questions? I see you. I acknowledge you. Your feelings are valid. Yes, I know. I hear. All right, well, I'll do my outro stuff. You can pop up any other questions into the chat if you have them. Hi. As always, it's going to scratch. As always, this has not been a audiobook of the Orphan's Tales. This has been a one-woman show, a play. You can find me, don't need my legs. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can get copies of them at your local independent bookseller's web portal. If you would like to patronize mine, it is printbookstore.com in Portland, Maine. Don't scratch. He's doing the making biscuits on my bare legs. No, I'm wearing a skirt. I can't think now. You can find me on Twitter at Catherynne Valente. You can find me on Patreon at Catherynne Valente. There is a beefy essay about lies and sharks and authority in fiction and establishing authority in fiction there right now. You can catch up in the archive at Cat Valente Live on YouTube. And if you are so moved to toss a coin to your witch, you can leave a tip in the tip jar so that this one gets to eat gushy cat food, the nice stuff on my Instagram profile, my YouTube profile, or my website, which is CatherynneMValente.com. You don't have to. These are free, but times are very tight for artists and freelancers and their cats. And anything that you can give would be deeply appreciated and will go towards our grocery run this week. And I will thank you by name on the next stream. Suj mentioned we are doing an online concert on October 1st. I will have details up about that soon. But SJ Tucker and I are doing a mutual online concert very soon. And these vast paws beckon you to join us for said concert. And we will be doing that October 1st. I will see you guys next week on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. He does eat a lot. This is 26 pounds of raw feline masculinity that needs a great deal of food to fuel his vastness. This is a Maine Coon. It is not a normal sized cat. You can see his head is as wide as my head. He needs lots of food. So anything that you put in that tip jar, the maestro here will happily hoover into his huge mouth. And yeah, no, he's almost as heavy as my child. Like, my child's only 27 pounds. He's 26 pounds. This cat is massive. Like, I saw Bastian look at him today and think real hard about riding him. And I was like, I understand he's the correct size. You should not do that. I'm just telling you now. So Byron says, feed me. And that he should be a part of every stream. And I say that I love you all. And I'm very grateful that you came to listen. And we will see you all next week. See, he's closed his eyes, so he's disappeared. And have as wonderful a week as you can possibly have in 2020. And as wonderful an evening as you can have as well. All my best to all of you. All Byron's best to all of you. Good night, everyone.